the life bars on liner locks, as well as frame locks. This applies to basically every locking mechanism in existence according to physics, but the more you use a folding knife, the more you open it. Whenever the locking mechanism engages the blade, you are grinding away the material on a very, very, very microscopic level. But tactically speaking, you are wearing it. You are wearing the contact points, the bottom of the tang of the blade right there, as well as the top of the liner that is making contact with the tang of the blade. Now with liner locks and frame locks, it's very easy to see how much life you have left in the locking mechanism. It's right in front of you. The more to the right, the more the liner moves this way, the less life it has left. This is at a very good contact point. It's pretty much in the center, slightly to the left, as much to the left as possible while making as much contact to the tang of the blade as possible. What I mean by that is if this liner were like right here, if it locked up right there, that's a perfect lockup because it has plenty of room to continue traveling throughout the years, if not decades, that you use this thing. If it's too far to the left, let's say it was locking up all the way up here, yeah, you have even more room, but it's not making as much contact. Now the lock bar is making maybe around 50% contact. If it were all the way over here, now it's only making, 25% contact or so. If the top of that liner is not fully contacting the bottom of the tang of the blade, it's not going to be as strong as it would be. If you're making only 50 or 30 or 25% of it's all the way down here, this knife will be more susceptible to closing on you if you were to accidentally smack it against something. It becomes less secure the more to the left it is. So as long as you're making full contact, you are reaching the full capabilities that that particular locking mechanism is able to do. However, what happens when the locking mechanism is too far to the right? Well, once it reaches what they call 100%, if this liner was making contact with this liner on the right, it has reached the end of the line. It no longer has any life left. Now, you may not have any problems initially. It may still lock up just fine. But as you continue to open and close it while the liner has reached 100%, there's only one thing left that can happen. As you open and close the liner and it grinds away the material, it slowly continues to move to the right as the material gets ground away. As you can see, the tang of the blade is on a slight angle. It's on a diagonal, as you can see. So the more the material on the liner gets worn away, it'll sink more and more into the right to compensate for the worn material since you've used it a lot. But once it reaches 100%, it has nowhere else to go. It's being obstructed by the liner on the right, or whatever the handle material happens to be on the right. So what's going to happen? Lock rock. That's right. The more and more you use this thing, when it's in the 100% locked position, when the liner has reached its limit, the material will continue to grind away, but it will have nowhere else to go, meaning there will be more and more of a space in between the liner and the blade, and it will start to wiggle. Essentially, that's how a liner and even a frame lock works over time. This knife over here has an earlier lockup than that Spyderco Tenacious we were just looking at. You can see it's more like, 80% contact. Not bad at all, especially for a smaller knife like this. It's not that big of a deal, but it's not making full contact with the tang of the blade. It still has a lot of time left to be broken in. This knife over here on the right, you can see the liner's a lot further. It's almost reached its limit, actually, and I haven't had this knife and I haven't even used it for all that long. But eventually, as I continue to open and close this thing, eventually I may start developing play. There's no play yet, but as this continues to sink forward and has nowhere else to go and the material gets ground away, it'll start playing. Right now, it's good for what it is because it's making full contact. So you want to find that sweet spot. Same exact rule applies to frame locks. So this guy on the left, you can see the lockups a little bit early. It's maybe making, 80% contact or so. There's a little gap right there. It has room to continue moving forward. The main difference between frame locks and liner locks as far as their lockup strength goes, frame locks tend to be a bit thicker than liner locks. Frames are thicker than liners, so they tend to just make more contact with the tangs of the blades. Long story short, they're a little bit stronger. That being said, they take up more space. So just like any other locking mechanism, if this reaches its limit, eventually it will start developing play. Let's take a look at this one. Also slightly early, but not too bad. It's still making more contact than even a perfectly locked in liner lock would, but as you can see, we have just a little bit of room left. There's a little gap. We have some time for this guy to continue to sink inward. This one right here is almost perfect. It's slightly early, just barely, but it's almost making full contact. That would just scooch in another millimeter or so. it would be making full contact. Look how thick that bar is. There's a lot of material in the way to help prevent this blade from closing on you in the open position. So there you have it, a little lesson on the life bars of liner and frame locks. Now, these same rules I described in this video also apply to every single other locking mechanism out there. Doesn't matter if it's a liner or a frame lock, all material eventually wears and gets ground away over time. The stronger the material, the more sturdy it is, the longer it will take to do that. The more material you have there, the longer it will take to do that. It's another thing I do like about the frame locks is that because there's so much more material right here, it's harder for that to grind away. Meanwhile, with liner locks that are considerably thinner than frame locks most of the time, there's not as much making contact there, meaning it will tend to wear a little bit faster. But again, lockbacks, even the axis lock, doesn't matter. They all wear, everything breaks down. It's just the law of entropy. That's how it goes. No matter what kind of knife you have, anything you have eventually will break, deteriorate, dissolve, and die. Yeah, sorry. Do you have any liner or frame locks that have an obnoxiously early or extremely late lockup? Do you have any experiences with a knife you had where you observe the locking mechanism slowly deteriorate all the way to its full limit? What happened? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to subscribe, hit that little bell notification if you do not want to miss weekly knife and gun videos, and feel free to support me on Patreon. Every penny counts, link in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Mannix out.